Okay, now I'm going to change the co-host to Jeff in case I have a pain attack. Okay, well, look at all the people coming on. This is really, really great. Good afternoon. My name is Gloria Lee. I'm with the Chinese American Citizens Alliance, and I'm here to introduce with our partner, the Japanese American Citizens League, Jeff, who is on the board, and Marlene. I am so grateful to you for taking on the responsibility this year of registering people. This is being recorded for all the people who are coming on board. I think we sent out an agenda. We are primarily focused on Multnomah County voters, and we have 90 minutes to go through quite a lot of issues that's on the ballot this year. I'd like to introduce Chris Colby, who is the chair of the voter service for the League of Women Voters. As we have done in the past, we will be sharing nonpartisan discussion points about what each of these ballot measure means. We are not going to be doing every single ballot measure, so if there's any questions, please feel free to put it into chat. As time allows, we'll take questions at the end, or you can put questions in the chat and I will try to monitor that. With that, Jeff or Marlene, did you want to say a few words or anything, or Amanda?
Well, we're so grateful to have Chris Colby with us. He is in charge of the Speakers Bureau with the League of Women Voters, and he is a I don't know if you're retired. He's an attorney. Are you a retired attorney? And where were you a mayor at? You said you were a mayor.
Yes, in the San Francisco Bay Area, a small town near Palo Alto. So.
Oh, I see. So we're very fortunate to be able to have Chris here to explain, you know, some of these kind of complicated measures that we have on our ballots. And if you do not live in, you know, Portland or Multnomah County, you know, we're going to start out first with the statewide measures, and as we progress, we're going to, you know, start going down to the county and the city. And if it doesn't pertain to you and if you're not interested, you know, we won't be offended if you drop off. But we certainly wanted to provide all the information about the important things that were happening in our community to our members. So thank you very much, Chris. Jeff, did you want to say anything?
No, I mean, again, I just say thank you for y'all being here. You know, the knowing that our vote is so important, for sure. But being an informed voter goes hand in hand with that, you know, being a voter. So again, I appreciate all of you being here with us, and let's get rolling.
Chris, I'd like to turn it over to you to start with the statewide ballots and then move on from there.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you both to the both groups for inviting me and League of Women Voters to talk to you about ballot measures, which, you know, for some people can be sort of an eye-glazing experience. You're talking about legislation. And this, I suppose, in one respect, is the downside of democracy, that periodically, usually about every 2 years, you're asked to pass judgment on whether a proposal that is either submitted by citizens or submitted by the state or local legislature is a good idea or not, and whether you want to approve it or not. And we have a mixed bag here. There are a total of 17 ballot measures proposed, but some of those are for special districts. And so we're not going to go through those. In doing this, I have a small slide deck that'll at least help us keep our place as to where we're going. And I'm going to see if I can share my screen now. Maybe Jeff or Gloria, can I get a co-host here? And we'll see how well I can do this. So
Give me a second. I will
Sure.
give you the ability to share your screen.
I think it's just being a co-host, I think. So, the number of propositions we're going to cover today is 12 and an optional 13th for those people who want to learn a little bit more about the Portland Charter proposed changes. And those are going to be fairly significant. They've garnered a great deal of publicity. I've gotten the mailer myself, and it'll be interesting. So let's take a look over here, and let's see. I want to make sure that you all can see what I want you to see, which is, do we have a slide up there now?
Yep.
Yes. Okay, good. Are you ready to vote? And that's what we're talking about here today. So part of the procedure is that we can take questions at the end. If it's okay with the moderators, I just as soon take questions as they come on the fly for each one. If we can, we'll see how that works out. If it puts us too far behind schedule, I'll skip it. But we'll start with this. And here's the presentation. There's my name. There's the League and the Alliance. And this is what we're doing. I'm going to start out with a little bit about the League of Women Voters, formed 102 years ago. It's nonpartisan. We never endorse candidates, although sometimes we endorse ballot measures. It is not for women only. I'm a living proof of that. The group is generally respected as a civic group for doing in-depth research before taking a position, and we've done that this year. We put that information in our voters' guides, which are in both print and PDF form. The print ones you may have seen at your local libraries. The PDF ones you can find on our site, which is lwvpdx.org, and you can see our voters' guide there. And we do our own summary of each of the ballot propositions, so you have that information. Lastly, I want to mention vote411.org. That is our national voter information online service. What's nice about it is that if you plug in your address, you can get your personalized ballot for the offices you're going to be voting for. You can also do it for your friends and family in New York, Texas, Washington State, and elsewhere. It has a great deal more information than our print voters guide, like approximately 90% more information because it's online. And so for that, I encourage you to take a look at that. If you aren't quite sure how to vote on the West or East Multnomah County Soil and Water Conservation District, this has that information. So you have a lot of information. I'll bet many of you got this yesterday, the voters pamphlet. So we have that too to go by. I want to start off with a little bit of a poll. Everybody here is registered to vote, right? If by chance you're not, and if you changed your address from the last time you voted, your deadline to register to vote is on Tuesday. And you can register online if you have an Oregon driver's license, permit, or ID from the DMV. If necessary, you can go and turn in your print voter registration guide at the Multnomah County Elections Division, which is located at 1040 Southeast Morrison Street. Anybody here received their ballot? If they did, they shouldn't have. They're only available to overseas people right now. They're the only group of voters that have gotten the ballot. And we're going to get ours in this coming week. How many here want to know of knowledgeable sources for election information? I'm going to tell you a little bit about that. I've already put in my plug for vote411.org. And can you, if you want to, vote live in a polling place in Oregon? We do it by mail. We've done it by mail for 20 years. But can you vote live if you want to? Yes, at the Multnomah County Elections Division, either on Morrison Street or at the Gresham Express Mail Center, which is in Gresham near Town Hall there. So you can still vote in person. Let's get on to what we have to talk about. We've got federal, state, local candidates. We've got ballot measures. How many choices do you have? Take a look at vote411.org. I've got 30 choices. There's a person I know in Eugene who has 33 choices. So, you've got your homework to do, and let's find out what we're going to be talking about. The sources of information I talk about are candidates' websites, the League of Women Voters, paper voters guides, the ones in the libraries, video voters guides. We have about a dozen candidates who did video voters guides this time around, and those are on our site also. We also did voter forums on the Oregon Oregon Bureau of Labor and Industries, the commissioner. We did a voter forum of the two candidates. That's on our side. We also did a voter forum for the two candidates for the Portland Commissioner Position 3, Commissioner Hardesty, Renee Gonzalez. And we've done some other ones too, so take a look at those. Newspapers are now making their endorsements. Newspapers usually follow politics and elections in government pretty closely. You might want to take a look at those endorsements to see if it rings true to you, if it makes sense to you. Then, of course, there are interest banks, depending on what your particular interest is, whether it's election security, abortion, gun rights, things like that. Of course, you'll find stakeholders and interest groups on both sides who will give you information. You get to decide how credible you think that information is. So the ballot measures we've got, the four statewide ones, are measures 111, 112, 113, 114. Some are controversial. Let's start with measure 111. This one amends the Constitution. There are two ways you can have a ballot measure on the ballot. One is to amend the Constitution. The other is to create a state statute. It takes more signatures to get a constitutional amendment on the ballot. And so this is an amendment that was proposed by the legislature. It amends the Constitution to make sure the state ensures affordable healthcare access, again, balanced against the requirement to fund other schools and essential services. So this puts in our Constitution, our basic governing document in Oregon, this statement of purpose. Why is that important? Because if litigation ensues, as litigation almost always does ensue, someone, if this passes, could say, you, the proponent, are not ensuring affordable healthcare access. And that's something we just voted on and put in the Constitution. This is not, it doesn't allocate any money. It doesn't set up any healthcare systems. It really is a statement of purpose. So I think I'm going to leave that one there. And if anybody has any questions, shoot them to our moderator and we can try and answer them there. But otherwise, I would call this a relatively less controversial measure. There are no substantial opposition to this measure so far. Measure 112 amends the Constitution. Here it goes again, to remove language allowing slavery and involuntary servitude as punishment for crime. Not that we in Oregon have allowed either slavery or involuntary servitude as punishment for crime, but this removes that language from the state constitution. You might view this in a way as a cleanup measure. Again, this is one that basically has no fiscal impact as assessed by the information that we have, but it's something that is basically a statement of purpose for Oregonians. We don't allow this. And here again, there is, I think, no substantial opposition to it at all. So as a matter of fact, I'm looking at the voters pamphlet right now. There's one statement in opposition to it. And it concerns the fact that this measure, if passed, might create a conflict as to what can be done in the jails and prison by eliminating that particular language. So you get to decide for yourself. Jeff, I see your hand up.
Great, thanks, Chris. I guess my question is, when you remove something from the Constitution, does that require a higher threshold of vote besides a 50+1, or not?
That's a very good question. And the answer is no, it does not. So to amend the Constitution, if you as a citizen want to propose a change to the Constitution, you have to gather signatures. You have to gather a lot more signatures to amend the Constitution than to put a statute or a proposed law up. And so you do have that difference. But no, there is no supermajority requirement to amend the Constitution. Okay. Okay, let's go on to Measure 113. This is an amendment to the Constitution, and they did it the hard way. This was done by gathering signatures. This is a reaction to the fact that since 2019, on 6 separate occasions, the minority party in the state legislature in Salem has walked out, meaning under Oregon's Constitution, you need 2/3 of the elected legislators to be there. And when the minority party walked out, they lost the quorum. And therefore the state legislature couldn't legislate. It couldn't enact anything. So the walkout, as it's called, is a tool of the minority party in Oregon. It's been used by both parties in the last 20 years. You don't have the votes, you walk out and bring the proceedings to a halt. And this is created problems on many significant measures. The last one around was the so-called cap and trade legislation, basically an environmental proposal, and the minority party in Salem walked out. So the majority party couldn't act to get that passed. And it's happened on several different issues. It was threatened last year when we had the decennial process of redistricting. The minority party, since it was sort of cut out of the process at the last minute, said, considered walking out and bringing the legislature to a halt so they couldn't pass the bill. In the end, the minority party decided not to do that. This measure, Measure 13, would amend the Constitution that legislators with 10 unexcused absences from floor sessions are disqualified from holding the next term of office. In other words, they're going to be kicked out. Is this really necessary? There is legislation right now that legislators can be disciplined by the legislature for what's called disorderly conduct. But that provision has been used very, very rarely. You may remember that I think it was earlier this year, for the first time in Oregon history, a legislator was expelled from the legislature. That came because there was video of him opening the door to demonstrators who entered the Capitol. But the proponents of Measure 113 say, we have to have something in here that allows either the Speaker of the House of Representatives, the State House of Representatives, or the President Pro Tem of the State Senate to decide whether an absence should be excused or unexcused. And if there are 10 unexcused absences, they're out. It's a very extreme measure in the sense that you're taking someone out of office, you're disallowing them to serve as a legislator. It has been, you might not be surprised to learn that the proponents of this measure are supporters of the majority in Salem. And so they say, we want to take away this tool. And incidentally, the quorum requirement for the Oregon legislature is very unusual. I think there are 3 other states in the United States that have a quorum requirement of 2/3. We have, for most states, it's 50%, so you don't have any problems in that respect. So I don't know if there are any questions on that. And if there aren't, okay, here's one. How many floor sessions are there typically? Well, floor sessions are usually daily, Monday through Friday during sessions of the Oregon legislature. The Oregon legislature meets roughly from, I believe it's January to about the end of June in odd numbered years. That's the regular session or the long session. So they're going to have a long session coming up early next year. And there will be floor sessions. I think they start out by maybe not having one every day, but by the March or April, they're going to have them every day, and sometimes they even have them on weekends. And it seems like the comment is, it seems like 10 is a high threshold if the absences are unexcused. I can see why you might think that. But we don't really know how this would work unless it's put into place, and then watch the Speaker of the House or the President of the Senate and what they consider to be excused and unexcused absences. So that'll be interesting. Another dynamic here is, of course, the way this would work is the majority, which controls the legislature, would be passing on whether a minority legislator's absence is excused or unexcused. Could that be political? Oh, yes, very much so. Why not refer a measure to change the quorum requirement? That's a very good question. Please go right ahead and do so. I think I don't want to give personal opinions, but I've already told you 47 states don't do it the way we do. So I think it's a high quorum requirement. Let me move on. Oh, one more. Will the 10 unexcused absences for both regular, longer sessions or short sessions? That's a very good question. I'm going to hazard a guess, and I'll confirm this in an email later. I'll send an email to make sure I know the answer. So I'm not even going to hazard a guess, even though I want to hazard a guess, but I'm not going to. I'm not going to 10 in a session or year. Sorry, I don't know the answer to that question. Okay. All right. The big one on the ballot statewide is Measure 114. Requires a permit to acquire firearms, and the police maintain a permit and firearms database. It criminally prohibits certain magazines. Magazines are where bullets are stored in a gun, and it prohibits any that have more than 10 bullets in it. There are some exceptions for this. The idea behind it is, I think, Portland in 2019 had a level of homicides that is 1/3, for example, what it was last year. There's been a great increase both in the sales of firearms and in firearms and in permits. Measure 114 would require individuals to get the permits and that they had to be acted on in 30 days. They also have to get training for firearms, training in firearms use when they seek a permit. A permit would cost $65, $50 to renew, and it would be the responsibility of local law enforcement to do that. So it has generated a lot of controversy. For example, there are those who believe that the Second Amendment allows a fairly unfettered use and display of firearms. The argument has been made in opposition to this measure that it is discriminatory against low-income people because it's a $65 permit. The fiscal effect of this measure is intended, if it passes, to offset any expenditures with permit revenues. So it's supposed to be a revenue neutral measure. That's the idea behind it. Will it stop? Can we say that it will stop or reduce gun violence? There was a study, there have been studies done that when we had a ban at the federal level, on certain firearms from 1994 to 2004 that the number of gun deaths dropped. So it could be a deterrent. It's not easy to tell. But when you think about gun fatalities in Oregon, there are two aspects to it. And this is true in most states, that most of the gun deaths are suicides. They are not shooting someone else. The person is shooting themselves. What is very unnerving is that Oregon leads the country in this category, in that 77% of firearm deaths are suicides. So, might this measure affect that? Perhaps it could. Perhaps it could. But you should, here again, take a look at what's in your ballot pamphlet, and then examine the arguments for both sides, of course. The individuals who are against this, some of them say this is just a step on the slippery slope to banning guns altogether, to taking away our firearms, which they maintain are based on the Second Amendment of the United States Constitution. The organizations against this measure would be the National Rifle Association, and there are others. If you simply put into your Google search engine Oregon firearms opposition, you'd get at least several groups who are opposed to this measure. There is a difference of opinion, I think, historically between people who live in cities and people who live in countries, in the rural areas. People who live in rural areas are probably more familiar with guns as in a sense, a tool for example, for killing livestock predators or something like that. And there are, of course, the people who use guns for sport. The proponents of this measure would say, you don't need guns with massive magazines for target practice. You don't need guns with big magazines to go shoot for sport shooting or anything like that. So this is an issue which comes up, this is not an unusual issue to bring before the voters. And so we're going to pass on it. Okay, so that pretty much takes us to the end of the state vote, the state things. Any more questions that came up on any of those? I don't see any, none in the chat. So we're going to move to the next one. Now we're getting local. We're getting into Metro. Metro has one measure on the ballot, and it's about money. Measure 26225, its official title. By the way, the official title in Oregon means you're describing the measure in 15 words or less. That's why it doesn't really read real well. This one says renews local option levy, protects natural area, water quality, and fish. And I think the important aspect of this and any other ballot measure is this new or is this a renewal? Because you might have a different attitude if, I've already been paying this, it seems to be working. You can always say, I don't want to do that anymore, I don't want to pay that. But this is not a new expenditure. This would continue an existing levy. And let me explain real briefly the difference between bonds and levies. Bonds can only be used for capital expenditures like purchasing property. Levies are used for maintenance of programs. And that's a significant difference. One way to view this Metro measure is that it's continuing to do something that's already in existence. Should Metro protect water quality, fish, natural areas, parks by renewing a 5-year operating levy of 9.6 cents per 1,000 of assessed value beginning in 2023. It renews current local option taxes. And an important area, if you're a homeowner, you'll want to know that term in the on the slide, assessed value, that is not market value. assessed value is the value that you see on your property tax bill. So it's going to be usually lower than your market value. But you can figure out what the tax would be every year. Take a look at your tax bill. It's going to be pretty straightforward. For this particular measure, let me take a look here. Metro manages about 17,000 acres of parks and natural areas. The capital bonds can only be used to purchase property, while the levy helps pay for the operations and maintenance. The Parks and Nature Operating Fund makes up about 22% of the department's total budget, about $23 million. Metro said if the levy is passed, about half of the funding will support ongoing restoration of parks and natural areas. About half will support providing access to residents across Greater Portland. The proponents are saying parks and nature support the livability of the region and improve the quality of life. They lessen the effects of climate change. And if you didn't renew the levy, there would be significant program impacts: habitat decline, loss of trees, and increase in invasive species. There are opponents to this. I don't think it's a major issue, but the opponents say that Metro doesn't publish any metrics to measure its success at habitat restoration and protection. And the long delay between purchasing land and providing public access contradicts Metro's mission of improving access to nature. So that is the Metro measure. I don't see any hands up or questions on that. Okay, now we move into the big 7 from the county. The county of Multnomah County has put 7.
Hey, Chris, before you
Sure.
start, I will ask. I was busy
Sure.
typing it out. Since it's homeowners, or are those costs passed on to renters for the assessed value?
I can't say I know the answer to that question, but as a renter myself, I would certainly expect they would be. Yeah, I would think a landlord. I would think a landlord, to the extent the landlord can, would pass that cost, a proportion of it. I mean, not the whole thing, it would be a proportionate one, but that's my impression. I'll say that. Okay,
Thanks.
sure. Okay, now we get into measure 26-230, the first of the 7. This one's pretty easy. The title amends the charter to replace gender binary pronouns with general neutral terms. The question is phrased as, should the county charter be amended to replace general binary pronouns, including he, she, his, and her, with general neutral terms? This has been going around for a few years, and legislators are modifying existing laws, and when they create new laws, they make sure that they read in a certain way. And it's been some time since we've had legislators who are talking strictly in terms of binary pronouns, he, she. It's sex and gender is much more amorphous and ambiguous now, and the county felt that in enacting measures, enacting laws, it should reflect that we are talking about a much greater group than just the 2 groups that identify themselves as males and females. So that's that. To me, this is sort of a housekeeping item. No questions that I see. So let's take a look at the next one, 26-230.
Oh, I have a digital hand up.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go right ahead.
Chris, could you explain to the group the difference? Both the city and the county did a charter review. Multnomah County Charter Review, they decided to break theirs up and have separate measures for each change, while the city has decided to do one package.
Yes.
And that's maybe a little bit confusing to people about the
Well,
process.
what I would say about that is the 7 county measures are very different things. For example, the one we just saw, 231, was about the terms used in laws. This one is about voting rights. You have ones down the road here that talk about different subjects. And it's a good question you ask, and it's one that was addressed by a Multnomah County Circuit Court judge, because the Portland Charter Commission proposal was challenged on exactly that basis. And it's a frequent method of attack by those opposed to initiatives to say, whoa, 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 hold on. You got a whole bunch of different subjects here. You can't expect us to vote, roll this all into one. And the courts, as a very general explanation, have said if they're logically and substantially related, it's okay to put them in one package. We'll talk about it later, but the proponents certainly say that with the Charter Commission change, it's really 3 items. Did they have to put it in one measure? They didn't have to. That was a political decision on their part. They could have put it on as 3. And again, the opponents challenged it and said, you got to split that up. And the judge said, nope, they're all related. They're functionally related. It can go on as one measure. But it's a good question. Okay. Thank you. 231. This one is interesting, if nothing else. The title amends the charter, voting rights to be extended as legally allowed. What the heck does that mean? The question fleshes it out a little bit more. Should the charter require the county to extend the right to vote, including to non-citizens, to the fullest extent allowed by law? I'm going to say, and I think I'm correct, that this measure, I would call it aspirational. It is not necessarily what is going to happen. Because, for example, the 2 groups to which it has been suggested the right to vote be extended is 1, non-citizens, and 2, people in custody. Both groups right now cannot vote. And again, the voting here would be only on county offices and county measures. This, of course, wouldn't apply statewide or anything like that. And so it is conceded, I think, by the county charter commission to put this on the ballot, that there would have to be research done to see whether the state constitution would even allow this, because the Oregon Constitution right now says only citizens can vote. Well, that's for state measures. Does that apply to counties? We're not sure. So the idea behind this is, hey, we'll take a look at expanding voting rights and see where we go from here. And to follow up on Bing Wong's question, that might be something where you'd actually have another vote. You know, it might come before the voters for a vote. Yes, people in custody. Traditionally, historically, people in custody lose their right to vote. They don't. That's been true, I believe, for many years in America generally, and it's true in Oregon right now. It was relatively recently, I guess I'm going to say within perhaps the last 10 years, that people who had been convicted of felonies and were on probation got the right to vote. You know, so right now it's limited to people who are actually in custody, in jail or prison, and they can't vote right now. Okay, so that's what it would be. Again, this is not a measure that would implement this right away. The county would have to look into it further. The opponents are saying in essence, hey, this is this is the Full Employment of Lawyers Act, because there'd be so much spent on legal fees and arguing about this. You don't need that. But we'll see what people think. It's an interesting concept. Okay, measure 26-232. Bet you've heard about this. This is fairly substantial. Amends the charter, county officials elected using ranked choice voting and runoff elections are eliminated. And fleshing it out more, the question, should elections for county offices give voters the option of ranking candidates in preferred order with instant runoff vote counting process determining results? For everybody here, including me, voting in America has been what's called first past the post. The person who gets the most votes in an election wins. That person is not necessarily going to get over half the votes. Sometimes they're elected with, 20, 37%, something like that. For example, in the spring, 37% of the voters voted, and the person who won one of the two commissioner spots up for election for the city of Portland won with essentially 18% of the vote, because turnout in primary elections is usually about half of general elections. General elections are in November, primary elections in May. And so one of the theories behind ranked choice voting is, let's not have two elections. For another example is in 2020 for mayor for the city of Portland, there were 18 candidates. Okay. And that's a lot. What would ranked choice voting do? It would require you as a voter to work a little bit harder if you wanted your vote to have more impact than it does right now. Right now, if you've got three candidates, for example, for governor, you actually have five, but the three major candidates, you'd say, if I vote for candidate A, I really like her, but I don't think she's got a great chance to win. So should I hedge my bets and vote for candidate B? Should I hold my nose and vote for candidate B? Because I sure don't want candidate C. Ranked choice voting would basically eliminate that problem, because what voters do in ranked choice voting, they get a ballot that has, well, it can have two, but the ones that are really important are where you have three or more candidates, 18 candidates for mayor or something like that. In that case, you vote for the candidate you want most to win, first place candidate. Then you can vote for a second choice candidate, a third choice candidate, and depending on the voting system, maybe a fourth or a fifth choice candidate. And so with 18 candidates, to stick with the Portland example, if nobody gets 50%, then how it works is they count the ballots in rounds. And so in the first round, if nobody has close to 50%, what they do is they remove the candidate who's last, and they distribute any votes for that candidate that had other choices, second, third, fourth choices, to the other candidates. And then they count the votes again. Has anybody got 50%? No. Then you take out the bottom candidate again and redistribute those votes to the remaining candidates. Anybody got a majority yet? And you keep doing that until somebody goes over 50%, and then you have a winner. And the proponents say that the major advantage of this is that it would eliminate two elections. You do it all at once. You have one election, and that's it. Because although it's going to take a little longer to count, and I don't think it's significantly longer according to the Multnomah County Elections Division, it's all done. And so again, using the Portland mayor example, you don't have an election in May for this. You have one election and it's in November. And the proponents say that this is better because, again, you have more voters by far participating in November than you do in May. The May primary elections are characterized by older voters, and usually the more vehement voters on either side of the ideological and political spectrum. In other words, people who really care about politics and government vote in May. So you had that too. The other argument, let me see if I can see an argument in favor of ranked choice voting is it's used in 55 other cities in the United States. It's used in Benton County. They've had it since 2020. It is used in foreign legislative bodies to elect foreign legislators at the local level. So this isn't an untested system. And what this measure, coming back to 232, this would impose it for county elections, county chair, and other county offices here. The opponents, the opposition to this say it's confusing, it's intricate. Wait a minute, I want to get this right. Well, let's see. It's confusing. Opponents say ranked choice voting creates the risk of strategic voting, where small groups can vote together in blocks to influence election outcomes. That is an argument. And I would urge you, and I'm trying to phrase this as carefully as I can, that anything that I say that proponents or opponents are saying, you check it out yourself. But these are the arguments that are made. I'm looking now back at the League of Women Voters summary, and it says ranked choice voting promotes more candidate, supporters say, promotes more candidate coalition building and greater diversity of candidates and discourages negative campaigning. That was described in the contest earlier this year for the New York City mayor. The idea is if you have ranked choice voting, then a candidate is going to say, I want your vote, and don't vote for anybody else. And you can say, okay, I'll vote for you for number one. But if you have ranked choice voting, somebody else can come to you and say, I want your second vote. Can I have your second vote? Because if number one gets knocked out, I'll have a vote for you. And the theory is behind it, you have more of a voice in you have a greater voice as a voter, because you're having several choices there as opposed to just one. So let me go to some of the questions here. So in round two, your second choice would move, your second choice would be redistributed. So yes, it would count that. If you voted, if your first choice person was the first person eliminated, then your second choice counts. Your voice counts there. That's the theory. And then Bing Wong, there's a form of ranked choice, star voting, 5 votes per vote. Yes, there is an alternative, star voting. I was a political science major, and I'm amazed at the number of different voting systems there are. I always thought it was pretty simple, but you're right. Star voting is another one. This is not star voting. Star voting is multiple vote voting, but this is not that. So you have different things. So, and the reason I spend so much time on it is this is one of the 3 aspects of the Portland Charter Commission proposed changes is ranked choice voting. Okay, any other questions? I don't see it. If you all understand that, I'm proud of you. I'm glad for you. It took me more time than I want to admit that I had to do it. 26-233. This is a real administrative thing. Amends the charter requiring annual jail inspections by commissioners with volunteers, and the reporting of what they find, and a response by the county chair to what they found. In other words, here's what we found. What's the county going to do about it? Okay, the county's going to do this. The question, should the charter require the county commissioners with selected volunteers to inspect county jails annually with interviews, record review, unannounced access, and public reports? This came as a recommendation from a person who said, you ought to look into this more than you do, and you ought to have regular citizens accompany the commissioners, because commissioners are already right now required to inspect the jails once a year. And the theory behind this and the rationale that the County Charter Commission used was we want to make certain that those inspections are done, and we want to make sure that the report comes out and that the county responds to what the findings are. So that's essentially it. Jails are also inspected by other entities, state correctional bureaus, and there is at least one other one that does annual county jail reviews. But that's what this is. So any questions on 233? Okay, I don't see any. We're going to move on.
Chris, I do have a question.
Oh, wait a minute, Jeff, you've used up your quota. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. I guess on you're saying that the commissioners are currently already doing this work. Is the process in which, like with selected volunteers, I mean, is that a difference in what they're doing, or I mean, are there differences in, other than there's not a report being generated, it sounds like possibly?
That's what it sounds like to me, but I find that hard to believe. But that's what it sounds like. I think this would make it more definite, but there is a difference. And I'm now looking at the league's analysis of this. What this means is that the jails would be inspected by the county commissioners actually twice a year. Once by they themselves, and once they themselves with volunteers who are going to report, and there's going to get it back. So it's more it would be more comprehensive, you know. That's
So currently the county commissioners are the ones that go into the jails and inspect them?
Yes, yeah.
And then I guess my follow-up question then becomes, have they done a cost analysis of this?
Well, that's a good question. The financial impact is, surprise, surprise, unclear. The charter committee recommended that volunteers be reasonably compensated for their time. However, total compensation would depend on the stipend, as well as the number of volunteers, the number of visits, and the time spent gathering information and writing reports. Testimony submitted to the Charter Review Committee also indicates that county staff time devoted to preparation and scheduling would also increase. So that sounds to me like it could cost more, you know, but it doesn't, I don't think it's going to be a big number, but it would result in more cost. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I see there's another question in the chat.
Okay. Is this in response to a problem that was found with the condition of the jails? To my knowledge, no. To my knowledge, this was brought up because of a single person, but now I'm going to retract that slightly. This single person may have detected something because, again, the jails are inspected by the Corrections Grand Jury, the Oregon State Jail Inspection, Health and Fire Inspection, tours by member of the advocacy community, such as the Disability Rights Oregon and Commissioner and other elected officials. It almost makes it sound like they're being looked at on a pretty regular basis. But I can't really answer the question you're talking about. Was there a major scandal and this was a result? I am not aware of it, but that's all I'm saying. Okay.
Chris, I'm gonna ask a few more questions, I guess, on this one. Sorry.
That's all right.
Was this forwarded then by an individual, and is there a collection, much like how we put state initiatives on a ballot, or the process there? And then just, are there other organizations that are supporting this measure?
I, I guess to be completely accurate, I don't know that anyone is opposing the measure. I will tell you, here's what opponents say. Neither county commissioners nor members of the public often possess the expertise in legal standards for jail inspection, nor are they well versed in identifying specific issues and proposing solutions. The county might be better served by audits informed by clear goals and expertise in the field. So, that's about all I can tell you. How all 7 of these ballot measures came up is from the county charter review committee. And that committee all by itself could put it on. So it's a group, that was a group of, I think about 20 people who put it on. So it's not the legislature. It's not, this is not the county, the county commission putting it on. This is the charter review commission. Okay.
Great, thank you.
That's okay. I see that I think I'm blowing my time, so I better move on to 34. Oh gosh, this is sort of another inside baseball thing. 234 amends the charter to establish an ombudsperson function in the county auditor's office. And an ombudsperson would impartially investigate complaints about the county administrative actions and make reports requiring a response. This was done at the suggestion of the county auditor. And for example, Portland has an ombudsperson, and an ombudsperson in very general terms is someone who is available to take almost any complaint and investigate it. In other words, they're pretty independent and they can look into a lot of things. But I will say this for this county measure. Let me see if I have it here. Yeah, this has, strangely enough, it has a lot of exceptions. And you will see this when you look at our voters guide. It would not investigate actions of an elected official or of the official's personal staff, any issues in litigation, issues subject to collective bargaining agreement grievances, violations of personnel rules, or accusations of discrimination from an employee or job applicant. Those are some pretty big exceptions. And I like to think that there are other ways of looking into all of those categories, but what's proposed here would not be able to look into those items. Is there opposition to this? The only opposition that the league says, this would be the opponent's arguments against it. It's unclear that there are currently problems with personnel or system that go unaddressed within the county. Or as some people like to say, this is a solution in search of a problem kind of thing. Portland has an ombudsperson, and there are people who say such people are needed. The fiscal impact is unclear because they don't set the salary. This does not set the salary of the ombudsperson if they created such a person. The one at Portland is paid $84,000 a year, and is a deputy who's paid $66,000 a year. Okay. Unless there's a big question, I'm going to go on the this. Yeah. Oh, I see in the comment, there's a comment of a newspaper endorsement, which is, is true. There are endorsements the other way too on these issues. So pick your paper, I guess, to a certain extent. What are their arguments in favor of or against a particular measure? Does that make sense to you? That's something to look at. 235 amends the charter to give the auditor unrestricted access to information and requires a right to audit clause. County auditor herself suggested this to the committee, and they put it on the ballot. She says that some agencies have been dragging their feet, and this makes clear that she, as the auditor, has the right to get this information. And so is there any opposition to it? Well, it's sort of like the last one. the county already agrees that the auditor should have access to necessary information. It's not necessary to enshrine that in the charter. Okay, you decide for yourselves on that one. 237 or 236. Okay, I'm going to go over this somewhat quickly, but this is a fairly substantive one. The committee that put all 7 of these on the ballot, believe it or not, is appointed by the state senator and the state representatives that have any part of the district in the county in proportion to how much of their district is in the county. So you have state legislators appointing committee members here. This would change that to make it the county chair who appoints, and you would appoint, let me see what it says here. I'm sorry, and I should give you the background. This, unlike the Portland Charter Commission, the County Charter Commission meets every 6 years. They are limited to 11 months. Among other things, 236 would expand that to 18 months to give them more time to act. And it would have 4 members from each commissioner's district, and would eliminate the requirement that they would be from different political parties, but they'd have to reflect the district's diverse communities. So that's really it, a different way of appointment, and the fact they would have longer to do their jobs. I'm going to ask that you take a look at it. There is no organized opposition to this measure. Okay, no questions. 220, whoops, nope, we'll get, no, let's see, wait a minute, did I work my way all the way through there? Let's see, I guess I did. Okay, we're at the breaking point where all non-Portlanders can leave the room. So, any questions on any of the ballot measures except the charter reform? I don't see any. So we'll go to the charter reform, the big one. This would change Portland's governmental structure. The question is, here's how the judge who heard that case I referred to earlier put the question: should the administrator, a new administrator, manage city government? And should there be a 12-member city council with 3 from 4 districts to make laws? And let me back up just a second here. Should the administrator manage the city government? This would be under the mayor, who would still be elected citywide. Portland has a system of government that it adopted in 1913. It is based on a system that the city of Galveston, Texas, enacted in 1900 as an emergency measure. None of the other 30 cities in the United States of Portland's size or bigger has a form of government like we do. When I first moved here, I read about how the government operates. I said, really? Are you kidding? Because you have 4 people plus the mayor. They are all elected citywide. And the strangest thing of all is the city count, I'm going to call it the city commissioners, the council, are responsible for various departments. The commissioners themselves, they are the head of the department, whether it's the police or fire or parks and rec or transportation. It's a very unusual system. And I believe that commissioners would admit, the current commissioners and previous commissioners, that a lot of their time is taken up on managing departments. Let me try and go through this as carefully as I can. So you have how the city is managed. You have a professional, a city administrator. Sometimes in other cities, it's called the city manager. That person would manage the bureaucracy, the departments. And instead of the current 5-member council, we'd expand it to 12 members. But it would be, and this is what's unusual, 4 districts, not 12 districts, not 12 single-member districts, but 4 3-member districts. And the Charter Commission admits that this is unusual. And I will say the opponents say this is completely untested. No other major city has a city government like that. So it's an interesting argument that you get to parse. And as was brought up earlier, this is one proposal. It is not 2 or 3 proposals. So it's either up or down on this one. And we've already discussed the fact that under this new system, voters would elect officials using ranked choice voting. I'm going to go to the supporters and opposition comments, and then maybe throw it open for questions, because I suspect it would. And I'm going to summarize the arguments here as best I can. The supporters say the inefficiencies of the commission form of government alienate the public and reduce the quality of life in the city. Voters easily understand how to fill out ranked choice ballots. Again, these are the proponents' arguments. We should have a city council that focuses on setting policy by passing legislation, not administering departments and the bureaucracies. By increasing the number of city council members and electing them by district, it will enhance the public's ability to contact them with concerns. Another argument, by running in a district 1/4 the size of the city, candidates may need less money to run for office and be less dependent on large donors. The last argument that is in the piece we did is, since there are 3 councilors in each district, they can work collaboratively. Here's what the opponents say. At-large council members each have official responsibility to represent the entire city, whilst district-based members who need only 25% of the vote plus 1 would be able to ignore districts and issues outside their own. It will be hard to know who speaks for the city. The current voting system, arguments of the opposition, offers protection against a weak or incompetent mayor, unethical or ineffective commissioners, and narrow interests in government. The opposition says that if the new system is adopted, commissioners could easily become entrenched, that is, difficult to defeat at an election. The opponents say a larger city council would be more expensive. And I should comment right here that the estimated financial impact, the city budget office estimates the direct costs of implementing the measure at between $900,000 and $8.7 million annually. The city's annual net budget is $4.66 billion, so the higher estimate is roughly 0.003% of the net budget. Opponents say ranked choice voting is too complicated for voters. They say that this proposal makes city government less accountable. If this measure, opponents say, if this measure is defeated, the city council can put forward a better proposal that could include a city administrator, districts to increase representation, and single members for each district. The opponents say the combination of ranked choice voting and multi-member districts has never been tried. Okay, throwing all that out there, I bet, does anyone have a question about this? I went through it very quickly. So let's see. Jeff, I'd even give you another question if you want.
No. But I see Bing has his hand up.
Okay, Bing Wong, go ahead.
Oh, yes, my neighborhood association is going to have a forum on this week or next week about this. And I guess the questions are going to come up, and there's several of them, but the one I want to know is, the charter reviews every, I think, 10 years.
Yes.
And so if this goes down, is it another 10 years before next commission can make a proposal? And then the other question is, since MAPS has a proposal, can he put it out by petition or by vote of the city council for an alternative to this if it fails?
Okay.
Or what can they do if it passes if they don't like certain portions of it? So there's
Okay, no, those are all very good process questions. Okay, taking the first one first. It is my understanding that the Charter Review Commission is established once a decade and that's it. And so it's not, my understanding is it's not going to be able to put out another proposal. So this is it for the Charter Commission. And the Charter Commission is not going to have another chance to do this. I want to make triple sure of that. And I'm going to do that by an email to the group. The second question is, okay, there's been a proposal and I have heard about that. Yes, MAPS could do this as an initiative for the city. He could do it that way. But the easier way, if he has the votes, is to get two more votes. And he's got a majority of the city council and they can put it on the ballot, whatever it is. I have heard what I believe, and maybe you can help me out here. I believe I've heard that there is one other commissioner who is in support of this, and the mayor and the two other commissioners, I don't believe, as far as I know, have taken a position on this. As far as I know, this you might say counter proposal has not been reduced to a specific writing yet. And I don't believe it's been, of course, introduced as proposed legislation in the city council. So we don't exactly know what it would be. And on your last question, it is my understanding that if this measure passed, the city council could indeed pass something by, with 3 votes to say, we want to amend this and do it that way. And some of the opposition arguments are, you're going to spend a lot of time trying to fix this thing. That's an opposition argument, okay? The proponents are saying, let's see if I mean, other than what I read, this is your one chance to do something, and it may not be perfect. And this brings up, the frequent argument in legislation that, the perfect is the enemy of the good, and that, you're going to settle for half a loaf. You have to compromise. Do you like everything about this, this proposal? No. Do you like most of it? Yeah. What are you going to do? Are you going to wait for a better proposal to come along? That's a long answer to your question. Did I answer it, Bing?
Yes, you did. And I think the consensus is keeping what we have is not acceptable.
I think everybody agrees with that. And so, yeah, go ahead. Did you, that's from what I've heard and talking, and listening and reading the media and listening to people, people want change. The question is, what kind of change? And so with 228, you have a change, and it's got, as has been said, it's got 3 major components to it. And the proponents say, these 3 have to work together. Part of the argument that they didn't bring 2 or 3 different ballot measures was that, what if one passed and the other 2 failed? Or what if 2 passed and 1 failed? It wouldn't be reform. I'm not going to touch that, but anyway. So,
well, thanks for answering some of the, the options
yeah,
that are available that I didn't know was possible.
yeah.
And because
And
I didn't realize that the city council by 3 votes can actually change things.
yeah, because that's what I understand Commissioner Mapps is saying. Hey, wait a minute, don't jump the gun here on reform. I've got a proposal and it's got some of the same elements as this one, but it's got single member districts is what he's described, as opposed to these 3 members in 4 districts. And the argument is, with a single member district, if you have a problem, you know who to go to. In a multi-member district, on the one hand, you could say, I've got 3 council members, and somebody else could say, yeah, and if they all ignore you, you have none. Well, that's another one.
And we also could have a lame duck commissioner after November election too. And other thing that's confusing people that opposes this is it doesn't state what the district boundaries are. And
That's true. Yeah.
and it was done on purpose.
Well, okay, that's part of it that I didn't mention is this proposal creates essentially a redistricting commission, and they take testimony and information from all people. They're supposed to respect communities of interest, and they draw the districts. There are only 4 in the city. You know, that's not going to be, I was going to say it's not going to be terribly hard, but I shouldn't say that. There's a comment in the chat. I've heard only 2 commissioners have lived in the outer east side. Yeah, well, yeah, that's one of the major pitches here. Almost all the commissioners in the past 20 years have come from Southwest or the inner east side or the central east side or something like that. The composition of the councils has not in any way reflected the geographic diversity of the city.
There,
There was also the comment made, I've heard that each council would represent approximately 50,000 people. So 12 is not unusually large for the size of the city. No, that is correct. The Charter Commission looked carefully at all the other cities, especially those of comparable size to Portland, and said, you know, the most common district is around 50,000 people. Right now, I think with the 4, if you did it into 4 districts, I think you get about 150,000 people. So it depends on how you want to count it as to who's representing who. There are different ways to do that. Let me take a look at this other one. The opposition claims that citizens wouldn't know which council members to direct their issues to.
and Chris, before you
Okay.
get too deep, Amanda had a question that talked about the process,
Yes,
like the process that went into developing the proposed structure. Can you give a
you
little
want
background
you
there?
want me to comment on that?
Yeah, please bring a little background to
Yeah,
what that
and I'm sorry. I know a fair amount about this, and what I know, I can't communicate all of it here. Under the Charter Review Commission, it comes up every 10 years. This was set up in 2007. The first one was called in 2011, and believe it or not, they came up with no recommendations. And a new Charter Commission was selected in 2020. In 2021, and members were appointed by the council, and they, in other words, the council suggested who would be, or said who would be on the commission. So the commissioners that came up with this idea were all appointees of the current city council, the current commissioners. They went through a very laborious process. They had a lot of input. They listened, I believe it was in the thousands of written and oral testimony over months and months. They had, I want to say dozens, if not hundreds of meetings. You can see that on the site. And it passed, this proposal passed in this group of 20. By 17 out of 20, 3 people opposed it. And so that's, I believe somebody has said 85%. How many groups, and in the argument of the proponents is, how many groups do you know that are, overwhelmingly in favor of such change? And that's a consideration. And the proponents would also say, sure, a commissioner can change the form of government, but you're never going to have as much input on the city council because they don't have time to do this. That's why you had a commission do it. They could spend hundreds of hours over months to come up with a plan. Proponents have also said that, well, gee whiz, guess what? The commissioners have a vested interest in how this is being set up. The Charter Commission is a group of citizens. They are not elected officials. And they came up with this product. You decide for yourself, there is a very big difference in how this proposal was generated and what I've heard is being proposed, which again is nothing that I would call certain yet, because I don't think it's, in writing to the council, here's what we want. It is ideas. And it was based on, and I know this because I think I read it, it's based on focus groups. The ideas were developed through focus groups as opposed to public testimony and public input. So big difference there. Did I answer that?
Thank you.
Okay. All right. What else do we have here? Let me take a look. Which council member to direct their issues? Yeah. Has the charter reform addressed this? And the comment here in the chat is, again, in a multi-member district, and this is the opposition's argument, you don't have accountability because you have 3 people. And in the worst of all possible worlds, they just bucket around among the 3 of them. Oh, go talk to him, go talk to her, whatever it is. And has the Charter Commission addressed this? I'm going to be real cautious and say, I don't know if they specifically address this. If it passes, does this include a plan for educating the public on changes? Yes, I'm pretty sure it does. This would not go into effect until, let me see if I get this right. I think, yeah, it'd be 2024, I think. So for example, if this went into effect, the redistricting commission would, start out immediately, well, in 2023, drawing the districts that we're talking about. And I'm trying to quickly pick it out. And I don't see what I want to be able to tell you. So that's that. I don't know if I can sharpen the difference any more than I have said. And I'm sorry, I can't. As a matter of fact, I'll also put that down as a subsequent email if I find something that I think would be helpful. Okay. All right. All right. Any other questions? Do I get to turn it back over to Gloria or Marlene? Or
You do have one more in the chat.
if this passes, the current council could make changes to this. Yeah, if they have the votes, absolutely. They are the legislative body. And so, I mean, technically, in the most extreme example, this passes, first thing that comes out of the council is nullify it. We reject it. We want to vote on whether or not to keep it or not. You can do that. So, but if it passes, obviously you'd hope that they would do a more considered and judicial process. Okay, let's see. I'm going to read Gloria's.
Well, Chris, you don't have to read mine, really don't, but and I was asked to be on the Charter Commission in the early days and I couldn't do it because of my professional work. And I think my opinion's in the comment section. I'm really, really concerned because I think people who know me know that I execute and I deliver what's asked for. And I think we're already facing some tremendous challenges in Multnomah County and the city of Portland. And to put such a big change through to be effective in 2024 in the middle of the crisis that we're facing scares the hell out of me, really.
Mm-hmm.
That's just what I have to say about it. That doesn't mean that I'm not for it. I'm just it's aspirational.
Yeah.
And so how do you take a dream and put real foundations under it and make it work? That's what's scary.
Well, and you're articulating another theory of legislation, which is, are you going to go big? Are you going to go strong? Or are you going to do this incrementally? There are people who say, no, toss out everything and start over now. And those who say, let's take this a step at a time. So anyway, I think, it's a tough issue. It's a tough issue. So I've seen what the polls say, and who knows? I don't know. It's very interesting. I've got to be careful. I have to keep my nonpartisan, impartial hat on here.
Well, thank you so much, Chris. And I think people that have comments, I would like to see at the bottom of your Zoom screen, there's a thing for reactions. If you learn something new in this presentation, which could you show a raise of hand or a clap or some indication? That was the whole point of us doing this, is that there's so much to learn. And the more that we know, the more we can be informed and make an intelligent vote. Sometimes reading the ballot doesn't give the whole picture. I
It's
also
not-
want to close and say that for those of you who work cross-culturally in particularly the Chinese community, these same ballot measures will be discussed in Cantonese and Mandarin at Midland Library on October 27th, and also at I can't remember, can't take pain pills, another library on November 2nd. And those of you that are interested, please email me. Thomas, that is going to go out to the Lee Association in Chinese, in traditional Chinese. So that will help. The other thing I want to say is I'm really pleased to announce that there are, in simplified Chinese, the ballot translation has been translated. It's on the Multnomah County website, and I'm sorry that I don't have it. I should be posting it. I think Bing Bing, if you're on this one, you probably have the information, but now it's available in simplified Chinese. We are working with the state of Oregon to make sure that this next time we have an election, it is also available in traditional Chinese. I don't think there can be anything more important than making sure that we, and I guess I want to use the word enable everybody who can possibly vote. And to me, that means, driving a ballot to a drop box or taking someone's hand and holding it. Don't tell them how to vote, but explaining to people how to vote and making them feel good about voting and using their voice. I can't think of anything that's more important to saving our democracy. That's being a little dramatic, but simplified it, than what we're doing today. So I wanted to thank all of you for spending a Sunday afternoon that's so gorgeous with all of us. Thank you again. And please feel free to give us some feedback. I'm going to turn this over to Jeff, Marlene, Amanda, and anyone else that would like to comment. Thank you. Jeff?
I was hoping that we could get a screenshot of everyone who's here. So if you feel comfortable, could you turn on your camera and we'll do a countdown.
Are you doing this, Amanda?
Yeah,
Okay,
Yeah.
good, because
And if someone else wants to take a screenshot just as a backup, that would be great. Okay, we'll do it in 3, 2, 1. And one more, maybe throw up a peace sign. V for vote. 3, 2, 1. Thank you.
thank you so much.
Well, that's
thanks,
really
Amanda.
nice. And actually, I'd like a show of hands. Gloria, you had asked if people would raise their hands if they learned something that they did not know. So please, I'd like a little feedback. So if you feel like you have learned something new that you did not know before, please raise your hand and we'll sort of see how that went. Okay, great. Thank you so much. And I am too. Well, have
right,
a
I'm
great
gonna-
day, everyone.
Yep, and I'm going to stop the recording again. Thanks everyone for being here. Have a
Thank-
great afternoon.
Thank you. Have a great afternoon, everyone. Bye.